Welcome to TV Africa News. This is Africa Today. My name is Najuma Luima, but first are the headlines.
In the news today, schools reopen, but observing the SOPs is difficult. Central African Republic declares state of emergency for the next 15 days. Also today, Africa records higher deaths in second wave of COVID-19. And in sports, Congo defeats all odds to draw against Libya despite hit by coronavirus. This and more stories in our bulletin.
Now the news in detail. Schools are opened for third term on 18th January 2020 and will bring to you the current situation in schools as they observe the SOPs given by the Ministry of Health. We have more on this story.
TV Africa has visited some schools in Kampala City to find out how they are observing the standard operating procedures, one of the conditions given by the Ministry of Health.
You can go.
According to Mr. Agaba Charles, the head teacher of Machindia Secondary School, they were issued a certificate of compliance form by the Ministry of Health confirming the fulfillment of all the requirements to prevent the spread of COVID-19. He says Machindia Secondary School was a mixed school, but due to COVID-19, they had to make it a boarding school to prevent students from interacting with outsiders.
The schools were inspected and the certificates of compliance were issued out. I think we have one, you can see it there. Certificate of compliance is there. Then we are given options, either to operate a day school or purely boarding. But for us, this is a mixed school, but we decided to operate purely boarding section. And all our candidates, senior 4 and senior 6, they're in the boarding section.
They have introduced temperature guns, limited visitors from coming to school, ensured social distancing in classes, including the dormitories, put in place hand washing cans, monitored students to wear masks properly, disinfected everywhere, and also managed to put in place a school task force.
To have disinfectants to disinfect the surfaces when students in class, in the dormitories, and even in the staff room. Others, of course, also we put in place the task force, the school task force, to enforce those SOPs as given out by the Minister of Education in liaison with the Minister of Education and Sports.
However, Mr. Agaba confirms that COVID-19 has affected many, where they had to be lenient to some parents who were unable to pay all the fees in time.
The parents had, at least we told them to pay at least in 3 installments, to pay 3 installments slowly. Not like other schools where they say you have to take a full bank slip. Because for me, I have my boy who is in P7. This time I was told to take a full bank slip, and I was cleared outside the gate. I found the bus outside the gate. You present a bank slip, you get clearance, then ASCAR opens for you to enter.
Moving on, drums are instruments that originated from Buganda region and originally used for communications within the society. Today we bring to you the originality of the drums with our reporter Nalugo Shakila.
In most cases, the drums were also used for singing, accompanied by other instruments. However, this instrument known as engoma is so common and used in many traditional activities, but most importantly, it's a clan in Buganda for princes and princesses. The drums are made out of woods and animal skins, but the production process is more complicated. In earlier times, bigger drums were carved out of old hardwood trees. Today, these are made of pine wood boards and assembled like barrels. Smaller drums are laminated using a leather with a rope being attached for carrying. Sensamba Henry runs a drum business at Mengo in suburbs of Kampala, explains that the major role of drums was for communication.
Yampuliziganya kubanga ne bwabanga wakabaga ne bawuliranga wamulirwana wali engoma ngajja olwategedde mu kutu nti wamulirwana mpulira engoma evugwa ekubwa kangendeyo ndabe yagendanga okusingana nga waliwo akabaga nga naye atuula nga basanyuka kale kwe kutandika kwa mimi.
Ogambye enkuba y'engoma mwalingamu ebika.
Nti walimu gwanga mujje walojje gwanga mujje bwe wabaawo ekibi oba omuntu afudde omuntu agudde ku luzzi omuntu yeetuze bakuba gwanga mujje abantu mukuŋŋaane waliwo akabi olidde ne babeerawo mujje tusome ku kyaki nga bagikuba ne bategeeza baliraanwa nti saavisi okusoma kugenda kukola ki kutandika era ne bayambala mangu nti engoma evuze tugende tusabe.
However, this has changed in this generation that people use them for other activities. According to Sensamba, a set of drums traditionally consists of 4 different drums, big and small, each with a different sound mix. The materials that make drums include animal skins, woods, etc., but due to climatic changes caused by both nature and man's activities, it becomes difficult to find these materials, as he elaborates.
Yenti tulifunanga bisi tulifunanga bisi etuli kaza n'omusana si muliro tuliteeka ku musana netufuna netutema obuti obwo babuyita mambo netulireegayo nerikala erimala okukala kati buno bwenkozesa buno netubusala mu ddiba ne kati engoma kyafuuka ekyobulambuzi omuzungu ava ewaabwe ng'ekimuleese kuno kulaba ngoma ekolebwa etya engoma evuga etya ng'ate eri covered teriiko waya era bajja wano ne bazitusumuluza naye nga kyanoonyereza munda mulimu ki ekiri munda nasinga nanga temuli kirimu nebuze evuga etya kuba engoma ezaabwe muzirabe ez'abazungu ibeerako waya naye beewuunya lwaki nevuga ng'ate nsaanikire.
Many people in Buganda and Uganda at large have transformed this activity into a business where they earn a living. For TV Africa News, Nalgo Muyingo reporting.
Moving on still, from a cattle herder to a leader. Today we bring to you the historical journey of President-elect Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Let's take a look.
Rukunjiri is far 370 kilometers, where Yoweri Tibuhabura Museveni was born on 15th September 1944. Museveni's parents are Muzei Amos Kaguta, a cattle herder who died in 2013, and Mama Esteri Kokundeka Nganzi, who also died in 2001. Museveni was born with brothers including Karebu Akandwanaho, known as Salim Saleh, and his sister Valeti Kajuwiri, all still alive. After some time, Kaguta's family immigrated to Ntungamo district. Museveni was born during World War II, and during this period all soldiers around were called Aba Museveni, which translated to his name Museveni up to date. Not like his colleagues in his age, Museveni went to school and studied much. He started his school journey at Chamate Elementary School, Mbarara High School, Tontare High School, where he finished his secondary school studies. In 1967, Museveni continued with his studies, where he went to University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania and got a degree in political science. In 1970, after studies, Museveni came back to Uganda and started working under Obote's government in the intelligence organization. When Museveni had just stabilized in the country, things turned his back when General Idi Amin Dada took over Obote's government, had to run away in exile in Tanzania fearing to be killed. In Tanzania, Museveni settled in the town of Moshi, where he practiced teaching, but he never left the idea of liberating Uganda. Museveni based here in Moshi and organized his colleagues to start a rebel group called as Front for National Salvation, known as FRONASA, in 1973. During this period, he got married to Janet Kataha, whom he had taken time falling for, and up to now, the two are a married couple. As they were still planning on how to attack General Amin, who was so strong at that time, a chance came when Amin attacked the borders of Tanzania and Uganda in the areas of Kagera in 1973. Immediately, Tanzanian government sent soldiers to attack Amin and Museveni, and his FRONASA group took this chance and joined the war. In 1979, the Tanzania soldiers managed to exile Amin Dada, and Dr. Obote came back for the second time. Museveni was the youngest man that time, energetic, brave and experienced, who was given the Ministry of Defense and after became a Minister of Foreign Affairs and other positions in Obote's government. But even he had served in different positions, Museveni wasn't satisfied with Obote's leadership, and he went ahead and started his party called Uganda People's Movement to battle with UPC in the 1980 general elections. Museveni to campaign over the country, but the electoral results shocked him when his party got only one post in the 102 total number of posts. This annoyed Mr. Museveni, and in 1981, Museveni and his group under NRA decided to go in the bush and fought against Obote's government when in 1986 took over him. Museveni was officially inaugurated as the president of Uganda, but he enjoyed it unlawfully because he wasn't being elected. It took him 10 years to organize the election in 1996, where he successfully won on 75% out of 100. This was Museveni's beginning of joy of Uganda's head of state, and in 2001 organized another election where he won on 69%, 2006 won on 59%, 2011 won on 68%, and 2016 won on also at 60% against Chiza Besigye. This time, Yoweri Tibuhaburra Museveni is contesting again, but this time with only 1%. The Democratic Party candidate Norbert Mao has ever contested with him.
Let's take a very quick short break. We will be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching TV Africa News, The Right to Know. Now, in our health news today, the authorities of Leone have announced a new lockdown of the capital, Freetown, and a night curfew throughout the country to counter the exponential increase of COVID cases in the country. We have more on this story.
These measures, like others made public Thursday, come into effect from Monday for 2 weeks initially, said in a statement from the Government Center for Response to COVID-19. Freetown has recorded more than half of the cases of contamination in the country. The authorities decided to restrict entry and exit from the western area, the territory corresponding to Freetown and its surroundings. Travel outside Freetown, considered essential, is subject to a negative COVID test within 72 hours. An electronic pass will be introduced to regulate essential movements. It will also be accessible through a mobile application. A curfew will be established throughout the country from 22 to 5 hours local time. Restaurants and bars will have to remain closed on weekends, and the wearing of masks remain mandatory in public places. Sierra Leone has reported 3,081 cases of COVID-19 and 77 deaths since March 2020. 4 out of 5, that is 80% cases of infection, were detected during routine testing or in travelers leaving the country. This is a strong indication of active community transmission, where the precise source of infection is undetermined, a sign of virus circulation and a complicating factor in the response, the government center said. The former British colony of 7.5 million people had been hard hit by the Ebola epidemic in West Africa, which killed nearly 4,000 people in the country between 2014 and 2016. It is still struggling to recover from a civil war that killed some 120,000 people nearly 20 years after the end of the conflict.
Still in health, Africa has recorded nearly 82,000 deaths due to the coronavirus in its second wave, the World Health Organization said Thursday. The figure is higher than when the first wave of the virus hit the continent in 2020. We have more on this story.
Africa is facing a second wave in the COVID-19 pandemic with more than 3.3 million cases and 81,000 lives sadly lost. So the first epidemic peak in July was surpassed in December, and cases are continuing to accelerate at a significantly faster pace.
According to the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the continent has recorded around 3.3 million COVID-19 cases. The World Health Organization Africa Director, Mashindiso Moeti, attributes this to several factors. Africa is facing a second wave in the COVID-19 pandemic with more than 3.3 million cases and 81,000 lives sadly lost. The first pandemic peak in July was surpassed in December, and cases are continuing to accelerate at a significantly faster pace. The World Health Organization Africa Director added that the WHO COVAX program aims to deliver 600 million doses of the vaccine to the continent by the end of 2021. An initial 30 million doses are expected, and I say this with some caveats, to start arriving in countries by March. These are intended to prioritize healthcare workers and other high-priority groups, and then expanding to cover additional vulnerable groups. A total of 21 African nations have so far recorded death rate at 2.5%, the Africa CDC Director John Nkengasong said. Globally, the average death rate is 2.2%.
In our business news today, vaccines for COVID-19 are generating a lot of talk. Countries are relying on effective immunizations to save lives and revive businesses. Let's take a look.
To shed some light on the type of vaccines available for countries in sub-Saharan Africa and how the process will work, Denis Mozin, CEO of Leone Foundation, the first to set up trials for the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine in Brazil, which has the potential to be a game changer in the deployment of a COVID vaccine to African countries. Starting a business during a pandemic may seem downright impossible, especially the COVID-19 pandemic has forever altered the business landscape. While some industries like travel and hospitality have suffered immensely, others like commerce have exploded. OPEC member Algeria is facing financial pressure after a fall in energy revenue during the coronavirus pandemic, forcing the government to cut public spending and delay planned investment projects in sectors including energy. Much is expected of the newly elected president, who has repeatedly vowed to reform the oil-reliant economy by developing the non-energy sector and seek new funding sources.
In our international news today, the Central African Republic has declared a 15-day state of emergency throughout the country as a coalition of armed groups seeks to overthrow re-elected President Faustin Archange Touadéra. Let's have more on this story.
The spokesperson for the presidency of the Central African Republic, Albert Yaloke Mokpeme, made the announcement Thursday on national radio. He said the state of emergency was applicable throughout the country for a period of 15 days from midnight, January 21st until February 4th. The measure comes as an alliance of 6 armed groups carried out sporadic attacks in towns far from the capital and on the NR3 highway, the crucial supply line linking Bangui with neighboring Cameroon. President Archange Touadéra was re-elected in a contentious vote on December 27, 2020, and was repelled by the opposition and several armed groups. Militias claiming to represent ethnic or other groups control 2/3 of the Central African Republic's territory, raising queries about government's control of the vast mineral-rich Central African country. The UN envoy to the Central African Republic, Manki Ndiaye, on Thursday called to the Security Council for a substantial increase in the number of peacekeepers deployed in the country after recent deadly attacks by armed groups. The increase must be accompanied by greater mobility in a very large country, added the UN representative. Ndiaye also deplored what he called a huge desertion since December of Central African Security Forces, which requires reforms. Mr. Ndiaye did not specify the number of additional peacekeepers desired for the MONUSCO mission, which already has nearly 12,000 troops and represents one of the largest and most expensive UN operations in the world. At least 100,000 people have fled their homes in the country as a rebel coalition calling for the resignation of the president. Though most of the attacks have been foiled by a combined operation of UN peacekeepers and government soldiers, there have, however, been a few blue helmet casualties. The situation has now thrown into jeopardy 2 years of relative peace in a country that was rocked by a brutal 5-year civil war that started in 2013. The security forces in the Central African Republic are mainly trained by the European Union and Russian instructors.
Let's once again take a very quick short break. We will be right back.
Human security in general terms should be one of the new goals, and that certainly will include justice, the right to feel secure, right to information, the right to know that they have an identity or national identity. They first need to know their rights, and that in itself may require some education. There are many people who don't know the provisions of their constitutions and the rights that are granted to them. So once you've taught them their rights, then you must be able to respect it when they claim it through the justice system. I think we've turned the corner. I think our many years of reform, economic reform, our many years of democratization has set us on course. There are bound to be pockets, of failures and pockets of instability from time to time. Failure is just the other side of success. Failure can be a stepping stone. You can build upon the lessons of failure. Everybody now watches the indicators, make sure that they redouble their efforts and whatnot. So the sensitization of the achievement of those goals are now there almost in every country. And so that will make it easier for the new development goals to be achieved, and to be achieved perhaps at a much faster pace.
Affectionately known as Liberia's Iron Lady, 72-year-old Ellen Johnson Sirleaf became Africa's first elected female head of state in 2005 following a presidential runoff. Born in Liberian capital Monrovia in 1938, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf studied economics and accounts at the College of West Africa until 1955. When she married James Sirleaf at the age of 17, she later divorced him after the relationship turned violent, and has since become a champion for gender equality and women's rights. In the 1950s, she traveled with her husband to the United States to continue her studies at the universities of Wisconsin, Madison, and Colorado. Boulder, Sirleaf later studied economics and public policy at Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government, gaining a Master of Public Administration. In 1972, she returned to her native Liberia to work under the government of William Tolbert, where she served as Assistant Minister of Finance and later Minister of Finance. Following Samuel Doe's military coup in 1980, Sirleaf was briefly imprisoned and later fled Liberia, publicly criticizing the regime. She was involved in the 1985 Liberian election, and in 1992 was appointed Director of the United Nations Development Programme's Regional Bureau for Africa, from which she resigned in 1997 to run for president in Liberia. Coming a distant second to Charles Taylor, Sirleaf stood again for president as the candidate of the United Party in 2005. When she was placed second in the first round for voting behind footballer George Weah, but won 59% of the vote in the subsequent runoff elections, making her the first elected female head of state in Africa. In January 2010, she announced that she would run for a second term in the 2011 presidential elections, scheduled for October 11th. One veteran of Liberia's political scene said Sirleaf's nickname comes from her iron will and determination. She has been awarded the 2011 Nobel Peace Prize for her non-violent struggles for the safety of women and for women's right to fully participate in peace building.
Welcome back. You're still watching TV Africa News, The Right to Know. Now, in our sports news today, despite the coronavirus hit, the Group B match went down at Japoma Stadium in Douala on Thursday when the Leopards of the DR Congo met the Libya Mediterranean Knights in a game that ended in a 1-1 draw. Let's have more on this story.
يرفع كورة الشاب رصاية في الشبكة جول 1-0 عن طريق الجول يا بور.
DR Congo suffered a series of pre-match blows when coach Florent Ibenge, goalkeepers Lei Matampi and Guy Saj Mukumi, defender Andy Bikoko, and midfielder Doxa Gikanji tested positive for coronavirus. After playing a goalless draw against Niger in their opening Group B match on Sunday, the Mediterranean Knights of Libya still maintained the flow when they drew a goal each with the Red Devils of the Republic of Congo. DR Congo now lead Group B with 4 points. Niger and Libya share 2 points each, and Republic of Congo secured 1 point. Friday matches will feature Group C matches where the leaders Morocco will face Rwanda and later Uganda Cranes to meet Togo. A win for Morocco will secure a direct ticket to the quarterfinals. Morocco and Uganda seem to be the favorite to lead Group C, but the Rwanda team can still outperform Morocco in Friday match.
Now, before we end our news bulletin today, let's take a recap of our top stories.
In the news today, schools reopen, but observing the SOPs is difficult. Central African Republic declares state of emergency for the next 15 days. Also today, Africa records higher deaths in second wave of COVID-19. And in sports, Congo defeats all odds to draw against Libya despite hit by coronavirus.
That was the news. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned. More programming coming your way.
This is Africa, and that was the news.